You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 308. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get On Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share the stories and life lessons of changemakers and authors with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Oh, today's guest is so incredible. I devoured her first book, The Heirloom, and her next book, All the Signs, is out today. I am talking about Jessie Rosen, who literally takes us on adventures throughout the world. I discovered new places that I had never even heard of in her latest book. And it is so good. There is astrology, there is life lessons and pivots, all of the amazing things. And I am so glad I got to finally talk to Jessie. I've been stalking her online for a while, as she will share. And she is just incredible. I love the way she writes, the stories she tells. And I know that you are going to fall in love with her and her books. Hi, Jessie.
Hello.
Oh, I am so happy to talk to you because I feel like we've had this relationship for like over a year. And yet this is the first time we're actually face to face and talking.
It's one of those funny things where, when you become an author, when you step out into that community, there are women like you who just become this like little cadre of support and encouragement, and you're there. But so often for us, we don't meet for a
Right?
while after. So this is really special for me too.
Oh, I love it. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes, I am Jessie Rosen, author and writer, and Los Angelino and Leo astrologically, which will pertain to this conversation.
I love it. And when this airs, it will be your pub day. So congratulations to you.
I'm so
All the
honored.
Signs is out today.
Unbelievable. God, what a feeling. This was the hardest writing project of my career. So it's feeling, my debut was so magical in so many ways, but this is different because this was so hard for me. So it's like landing differently
Hmm.
because I think a part of me didn't know if I would finish this book. I was really struggling with it, which we can talk about or not. But so it's like it's special for different reasons this time.
One of the questions that I have, and it's really for both books because I love The Heirloom as well.
Thank
And I
you.
felt like I remember messaging you throughout reading that, going, okay, so I
Totally.
have this story about this ring. And
I know. And you were one of the few that reached out very kindly to say that. But as I was kind of around with the book, so many people had experiences with that too. So,
That's so funny.
yeah,
So, uh, how much travel is involved in the research of these books?
yeah,
Because there was a part of me going, "Oh, this woman is so smart. She is writing about these places that now I want to go."
yeah.
And the island that you talk about, where there's all the colorful houses, it reminds me of
Mm,
Capitola, but how everyone is happy. And
yeah.
I told my husband, like, we gotta go to this island. It's some happy people and happy houses, and we could just live on
Yeah.
an island.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, that's not out of the realm of possibility for me. And this book was a little bit different because, so with Heirloom, I wrote the book of that book during the pandemic, so I couldn't travel. So all the travel destinations in Heirloom, which is Tuscany, which is Portugal, Lisbon, the Algarve, west coast of Portugal, all of those were from previous travels that I was kind of remembering and wishing I could get myself to as we were all trapped at home. But with all the signs, I had the chance to get out and do some research travel. So a little bit of it was what are the places that are natural to this story? This story is about astrology. I wanted to do research that was based on locations that were both significant to the character and also significant to astrology. And Venice is one of the ones that totally lit up around that. I'm an Italy lover. I have Italian heritage. And so for this book, even though Istanbul is featured, New Orleans is featured, New York, Los Angeles, I had been to all those places before, but Venice is the place that I got to physically go to research, including the island of Burano, which everyone talks about Murano. That's Murano glass. But Burano is this even smaller island in the big kind of like archipelago of the Venetian islands. And it is just as I hope, just as it's written, it is one of the most colorful, beautiful, vibrant places. So the minute I was there, it was not my intention for it to be in the book. It was a place I stumbled upon, kind of like my character. But once I got there, I just thought like, it's so vibrant, it's so transportive. And that was kind of where my character needed to be in her experience anyway. So magical.
You're a genius.
It worked out.
I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write a book about somewhere
Yeah,
beautiful and
I
go
know.
research it.
Where next? And we need that. I mean, I think that travel is such a big piece of how I access big thoughts and change. Travel is transportive to me. So it makes sense to me to have travel be a component of my character stumbling upon pieces of herself, realizing and expanding. All those things happen for me when I travel. So I do think those are two things that were really important for me to be in both books.
I love the premise of the book, and we won't give any spoilers away, but
Yeah.
we have this woman who she has her life set out for her. Basically, she follows in her father's footsteps for her career, and she's very like I want to say straight laced, but kind of
Hmm.
straight laced. Like
Yeah.
she does her job. She wakes up, it's routine. She literally eats the same thing, and then is thrown off by this astrologer who's like,
Yeah.
"You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing."
Right.
And I feel like for many women, myself included, you hit this point in for me, it was mid to late 30s after having kids where I went, yeah, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
I need something else. And it wasn't astrology that helped it. It was just this natural, float and pivot. But I felt like that was part of
Yeah.
what this story was about.
Yeah.
Um, and was
Yeah.
astrology always something you were interested in? Like, how did this all come about?
Yes, and I am skeptical. My character's very skeptical. She's science minded. She's my STEM heroine. She is a doctor. She doesn't want to hear it. She needs the proof. And in the heirloom, in my first novel, I wrote a believer. Someone who could not be convinced out of their beliefs, in
Hmm.
fact. So I thought it would be really fun to write a skeptic. And I am skeptical by nature, even though I'm always kind of like searching for reasons to believe. So astrology is something that kind of came to me very oddly. Um, I moved back to Los Angeles. I was born in Los Angeles, but my parents raised me back where my mom is from in a beautiful small town in New Jersey, kind of like my character. And so I just had this inkling that I was meant to get back to Los Angeles. My writing career was taking off in the television and film space while I was living in New York. And so I decided it was time to just try out Los Angeles. And I was 26, which means that I celebrated my 27th birthday in Los Angeles, back there for the first time on my birthday since my birth, right? And was in a relationship with someone at the time, and he lived a block from the hospital where I was born.
Hmm.
And on the morning of my 27th birthday, which is significant astrologically, it's this whole Saturn return thing, doesn't matter. I sprung out of bed and it was still dark. And I looked at the clock and it was the time I was born.
Oh, I just
And
got
so I had
chills.
this like, I know. And I was telling that story to a lot of people. And if you tell that story to at least three people in Los Angeles, 100% will tell you, you need to go see an astrologer. So that was the origin. I had this weird experience relative to my birthplace and date and time, and I didn't even know what a birth chart was. So the idea that we are born under a map of stars and planets and constellations, and that perhaps the position of all of those powerful push and pulls of the planets has some significance down here. That's the birth chart, the idea of the birth chart. I had no idea about any of that. And so that is how it began, but that was many years ago. So I kind of always had this interesting relationship with astrology. I thought it was interesting as a storytelling device. And it was like one of those things I kind of kept in my back pocket until approaching turning 40. And that is when I was so curious about the things in my life that weren't the puzzle pieces that weren't fitting together, the confusion I had about career pieces and life pieces and all this stuff. And I I wondered if anyone else was experiencing what I was experiencing. And then I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, what if people with my same birthday, because I was already a little bit involved in the idea of astrology, I thought, oh, is that an interesting way to go on an adventure to explore this? So I found several of my own birth twins.
That's
I call them
amazing.
star twins. I call them star twins in the book, this idea of people who are born under my exact same map. And I was so fascinated by it. And that is how this whole project kind of started to develop. I was most fascinated by the people that were very, very different from me. Because I kind of ladder up to my astrology. I kind of do the stuff that people with my, so they say,
Mm-hmm.
are supposed to do. But when I encountered people who didn't, and I had that fascinating query around like nurture versus nature versus fate versus family, it just that is what really I think birthed this book.
That's interesting. Yeah, I love that there's fact. Like, what do we? I don't want to call this book a novel anymore because there's so much
No,
truth to it.
and I do think that for me, just because of how I get into it, there is always a ton of autofiction in what I write. I wanted to imagine what could have been if my path had been so different. I had parents that from go were always encouraging of me working in the arts. They were always encouraging of my writing passions, always, I was never told that's not a viable career. I don't come from a family where there's a lineage of business like my main character. This
Mm-hmm.
idea of I will run the family business, I will run the family practice. That's so powerful, right?
Yeah.
And I really wanted to put her in an environment that she loved. I come from a charming hometown, but I will admit my eyes were kind of always looking elsewhere. I'm a city girl. I always envision that. But my character loves the place that she's from. Rightly so. It's this beautiful, charming, lovable shore community, in New Jersey. So then what, right? So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
took all the things that I had and reversed them and then tried to imagine, what could happen.
I loved it. And you've got a love component, you've got
I
a
do.
parental component to it. There's all
Yeah.
of these relationships that go on and girlfriends. Like there's a lot in this book.
Yeah.
And it made me think as well because of the way that we look at or experience someone doing whatever they're doing and not knowing or understanding the why behind it and
Yeah.
taking that time to really sit down and ask. And I'm referring to her mom obviously, but
Totally.
her dad was also doing things that worked for him and her cousin, and it's a lot. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It just is I
Oh, thank
yeah, I
you.
enjoyed the heirloom too, so of course I was like, oh my gosh, you have
Yeah.
another book, yes please give it to
Yes.
me.
But don't you think, I mean, I have so much heart for people who I don't even want to use the word stuck. They're in a place. Stasis is comfortable. What
Hmm.
we know is comfortable. These people who are in her life, who are encouraging her toward the path that has been set, they love her. They want her to be safe. They want her to be happy. So I think that I'm always inclined to, instead of writing about deeply traumatic moments that it is so clear this character has to break away from, I'm really curious about what it takes for a character to then say, "Ooh, but oh my God, I think I need different. I think I need more. I think this isn't quite what feels right inside." Because I
Hmm.
think that is so hard, in all
It
the ways
is.
that I have made changes from my own family, despite the encouragement I've received, it's really hard. And I
Yeah.
think, that's a little bit of what the picture I wanted to paint. And I hope that it is encouraging of my character makes some big moves in the end, but she also makes some small moves. And I'm so curious as readers find this book when they close it, like what's the one thing they want to go do? If there's one thing, like what's the one
Yeah.
piece of themselves that might get a little adjustment? Because I don't necessarily think it has to be a huge life overhaul to make a big feeling difference.
Right, and she has so many life overhauls, it feels like, it's like she's
She
changed
does.
literally everything.
I know.
Uh,
It's so hard too, right? When you're writing a book, you often think, how fast can I realistically change her whole life? Because we want to go on this adventure, and I like churn. I like a page turn. I like to get into that momentum. I think a little bit of that is from coming from the film world and the TV world. It's like, let's get into that action. But right, like it is, we have to make sure that she's going through the paces. And think a little bit of what I wanted to paint with this character is her level of intelligence means her brain gets there fast. So once she's introduced to these ideas, she's going to push back, but then she's too almost stubborn about the research process. That's how
Hmm.
her whole thing begins. Is like, I will not be told that astrology is certain. I will prove that it's not. So that
Right.
stubborn nature of her, I think, is actually what kind of catapults her, and it proves to be kind of like an engine of how she changes quickly.
I love that. You've brought up TV and film twice now. So
Yeah.
I want to know, how did you start? What did you do? Where were the pivots that have brought us to where we are today with you?
Yeah, and that is also just a everything that's happened in my career has been this like little turning over of like little reveals along the way. So my whole career started with a blog. So this is 2005. I'm aging myself, but that was the heyday of the blog. I had a blog called 20 Nothings, and it got some really lovely attention. And I was approached by someone with a theater company that wanted me to contribute to a one-act play festival. I had never written a script like that in my life. And that's really how it began. So this is still back in New York, and I got the bug. I'd loved film and TV, but I didn't have an access point. I didn't have anyone in my life that did that work to understand how I would make that a dream. So it was very slow. It probably took me 3 years from writing my first play to move to Los Angeles and then ultimately get film and TV representation. So, like a book agent, I have a film and TV lit rep. That's what it's called. Interestingly, it's called a literary rep, even though it's film and TV writing. And one of the first ways that I kind of started in that was in selling original development, which is the process of coming up with original ideas and selling them to TV studios or networks. So you kind of pitch the idea and then you're paid to write the script. And then sometimes they shoot the project and sometimes it goes all the way. And frankly, very often it doesn't.
Hmm.
So I was in that kind of development cycle, and then ultimately was a staff writer on a few different things. And then the last thing I did before and really up until the pandemic was I was show running. So I was the head writer on a series that's currently on Amazon called The Baxters. Very much a Seventh Heaven. Now I'm dating
Uh,
myself for
and
the
I
second
watched
time.
Seventh Heaven. Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
So that kind of vibe, right? Like family drama, all the things that are infused in all everything I write, really. And then the pandemic hit, and I had really time for the first time in years. It's so interesting. I could have always considered The Heirloom, which was my first, as a movie, and something about, little girl me dreamed of holding and having a book, even though I was all over the place with my writing styles. And I was loving writing in film and TV, the collaborative nature of it and being on set. The Heirloom held a place in my heart that was different. It's like that was always what I wanted to be my book. So I had never written it as a film project. I've never considered it in that way. And then I don't know what it was about the quiet space of the pandemic that let me say, I've always wanted to try to make this happen. And now's the time, and I have the time. And so I'm just going to put pause on this stuff. The world had put pause on it.
Hmm.
So the idea of stepping into trying to get this manuscript done. And so now I've kind of, this pivot has kind of revealed itself. But it's interesting to me that it was almost a product of the world, right? As like so many things are for creative people, right?
Yes, and it obviously it's a common theme for you of what the
Yeah,
world wants you to do and what you're meant to do.
kind of funny. That's really interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way in terms of just kind of coming up against these moments, but yeah, maybe both books have been faded. I don't know.
I love this. And so let's go back to your birth chart, and you go
Yes.
and you get this birth chart, and
Yeah.
you're doing this research to find your
Yeah.
star twins. Are you believing in it all?
It's both impossible, in my experience, it's impossible not to, and it's impossible to all the way, right? Because so many things happened in the people that I met. I'll give you one example. The very first star twin I connected with had the same name as the main character in my debut, which is a weird name, Shay.
Huh.
So it was like this weird kind of like, what? Did I create you into being? And, I feel very connected to what the stars say I am supposed to feel and be and the struggles I'm supposed to have. I found that most of the star twins I spoke to felt very similarly in those capacities. Um, And the ones that felt and behaved and their lives look very different, they were aware that something was off in their lives, which is really interesting.
Huh.
So it's so hard for me to make a call, and I had to play with that very carefully with my character because, and this story, I want this book to be accessible to skeptics and believers. This is an easy lift for believers. They believe, right? They're
Right,
going to,
right.
I hope, delight in this book and all the fun of the astrology. But this is really a book for the skeptics, you know?
Yeah.
And that was kind of my experience of, okay, if I'm skeptical, then what can I get from this where it really doesn't, I don't have to believe. And I think that's actually how I approach so many of the things in our universe that we can't understand, right? Like my relationship with a higher power. Do I have to believe to find comfort in a quiet moment speaking to something bigger than me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I have to ascribe to rules around X, Y, or Z to benefit from the idea that there is something pushing and pulling some of the strings of my life? Right. So, this, I can be prone to binary thinking, and yet, I really think that all of this belief system, whether it's astrology, religion, whatever it is just an invitation to ask questions
I love that. I love
and
it.
to
And
ask questions, I think most importantly about ourselves so that
mhm.
we can show up as the best daughter, spouse, mother, sibling. I think it's about really what Heirloom was about too, is this idea of if I can be the best version of me, then I am the best community member. I am the best, in relationship to other people. So it's like an inside out thing. Um,
Absolutely.
I think there can be a conversation around astrology being selfish. Oh, you're all about your signs. Everything pertains to you, all the rules. And of course, it can go that way. Absolutely. And there's a bit of a conversation about that in the book. But ultimately, I actually feel like it's a path to participating in the world as the fullest version of yourself, which to me is the opposite of selfish.
I love that. I'm very much a let me read my horoscope. I get a daily email from my horoscope. What
I
I sit
can't
down,
believe
I
we've
read
come
it.
this far without discussing what your sign is.
Oh, I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
I
a
have a Cancer
Cancer.
moon. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, I like this about you. This makes
Yes,
sense.
the hard outer shell and yet the soft inside, and
Well, and
like,
you do so much work. My perception is that you do so much work to kind of teach and give and build. And, there's a lot of the word that is used, which can be a challenging word for some people, but is this mothering energy. And I don't think one has to be a parent to have that idea of this mothering energy. I think it's very like Mother Earth, you know? And when you create the kind of content and effort in the way that you do, like that's so giving in that way.
thank you. And I've
See, now I
you're
sound like
not
I
the
really do believe
no,
in
you're
astrology.
not the first one to refer to me as like the mother type thing. I've heard that before, and it resonates. I've always been this way ever since I
Yeah,
was a kid in school. This has
yeah,
always been the way that I am.
yeah.
Now my husband, he would like, no, we don't do, but yet he will read every Sunday night as he reads the paper. He goes, "Do you want your horoscope? Here's mine." And he will read that.
I
And
know.
now that, like, all of a sudden, the past couple of years, I'm like, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, so be careful. He's like, "Oh, is it in retrograde now? Is that what's going on? Is that why, everything's to shits?" Or
I love it. And I think it can be really fun. It is one of those things. I'm so excited to do this on book tour. I want to ask everyone in the audience, are you a believer or a skeptic? And see a show of hands. But then I want to ask everyone, do you know your sign? And see a
Mhm.
show of hands, because 100% of people know their sign. And then I want a show of hands, do you read your horoscope? Because I really do think that most people, whether they believe or not, they're engaged in it in some way, right? It's just a part
Yes.
of our culture. Think it's fun. I think it's a fun and reflective way to just have a little picture of like, where am I today? Who am I today?
I love it. I remember as a teen getting, like, I don't know what magazine. It was some sort of a teen magazine would arrive in the mail,
Classic.
and you get your monthly horoscope, for the month ahead.
Totally.
And I would love that. And so
Yeah.
it's funny that Sunday night we read our horoscope for what should have happened that day, and we're like,
Oh,
did it
that's
happen?
funny.
Yeah, whereas I read every morning, it's part of my routine.
Yeah.
A little pivot year, a little bit of Jimmy Carter's meditations right now
Oh, that's so
on tyranny
charming.
and my horoscope. So I like to
What a
think it
set.
rounds me out.
But that's You're speaking to exactly this thing, right? If it is only astrology, that's not good. That's not healthy. If you're only ascribing to one thing and that's your true north, that can't be the way that it is. So it was really important to me that in the book, the character comes across people that have found lots of different ways to access self
Hmm.
and to kind of go through the rigor of a big change. One character in particular that is, I don't like to choose favorites, but a really special one to me is this character, Imani, who's a life coach. And she has been
Yeah.
through some really big stuff. And there is a reveal around how she actually thinks about astrology. So, trying to kind of play with that idea of change moments and the power of them and how we get to them and all the different paths. Because I imagine, I think of my character now, she's continuing on in her journey. I can like see her in my head doing what I set her out to do. And I
Yeah.
think she's using all of those tools, but I think she's checking her horoscope for sure.
Definitely. And I'm not going to spoil it. When we're done, I will tell you what I think she's doing too. Uh,
Yes, I love it.
and what her new life is like.
I love it.
Oh yes. No, I'm like, I have to silence myself because otherwise I will just go off on it. But
No, it's hard. It's
I
hard not to. But there are
yeah,
some, because it's funny. I don't write mystery, of course. And yet I like a book that turns over a lot of cards. I like for you to be curious where things are going and for there to be some big reveals and for things, the puzzle pieces to kind of come together. So there are a few things that are, yeah, mysterious.
yeah, I loved it. And I want to say I did cry at some point. I know I cried. Oh yes, I
Mm,
did. I did. Yes, there were two parts that I cried. And it
yeah,
has to do
me
with Los
too.
Angeles.
Me
I'll just
too.
leave it at that and I'll tell you when we're
Yeah.
done. But it was Los Angeles that I was, yes, there
Yeah, some
was,
tough stuff happened there, and there were some tough decisions. I'll confess, I feel like this is important for any writers listening to know. I threw out almost an entire first draft, really, truly, almost a full page one rewrite. And this book was written very quickly, so that was a challenging thing. So it's so interesting to think about when you say like Los Angeles, it's a place that my character goes, and yet much of what happened in Los Angeles did not exist in the entire first draft. So it's
oh,
wild to think about kind of where, I think it's interesting. I always think in first drafts, I'm like protecting myself and my character. They're never messy enough. I don't
yeah,
want them to get messy enough. And then finally, I found my way to like really get to the heart of some stuff in this book that I hope is what pulls at the biggest and heartstring moments. But
yes.
it's wild to think that what was I doing in that first draft?
I love that. Are you
Yeah.
working on something next? Because you're churning them out now. So,
I am working on something next, and I feel like I will always be playing with family, with the empowerment of women, with women finding themselves and therefore their truths, with components of travel. Um, but I'm playing with a big piece of source material. So that's all I'll say for the next one. And
I
I'm
can't wait.
putting chapters together and I'm going on a little research travel trip to
Let me
get
know if
ready
you
for
need an
that.
assistant.
I know. So I'm getting ready for that, and so I'm really excited about it. It's been so interesting to kind of, so much of the book world, right, is about like to a certain degree establishing a brand, and I
Hmm.
think that is. I know that sounds like marketing speak, but I do think it's important to give readers a sense of who are you as a writer.
Yes.
What are you going to get from me with everything you read and figuring out for yourself? Because these books are so big and it's such hard work that if it isn't core to something that you want to be saying to the world, I think that's what we mean when we talk about brand. Is like,
Yeah.
I've got X much time on this rock. What must I say? What must I communicate? Like, what am I just so hoping people can take away? That's what I think of when I think of a brand. So I've been thinking about that because I am expanding into a place of some known material. And still, everything is going to tie back to the things that have been cornerstone to the writing so far.
Oh, I love that. I can't
I
wait.
hope. I
It's,
hope.
I love that when you read a book and you go, oh, I really enjoy this. I enjoy this writer. And then you come out with another book. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I need to get my hands on it. And it's so nice to find an author that you really just know that whatever they're going to write,
Oh,
you
that's
want
so
to
kind.
devour, and you know you're going to love it. I had no questions about going into this book because I loved the
That's
first
so
one.
lovely.
I was so excited. I was like, yes, another opportunity to read your work.
That's
Yeah,
so, so lovely. Yeah, I mean, it makes the writing, there's such a double-edged sword to that. I was so anxious, and they always say sophomore books are the hardest. I was so anxious to deliver that same
sure.
experience people enjoyed. And yet, really what I remember helping me is trust your instincts. Do what you did, right? You did this. Attracted these readers, and these readers had this experience. Listen to what they said about the first book. And I did. I went back. I remember rereading your messages and looking and seeing what people had really mentioned and using that as a true north for like, these are the things that people loved. This is what the writing needs to be infused with, because you've suddenly, like, it's like you forget, like, wait a minute, I have a path here. This worked. How can I kind of try this again?
Oh, I love that. I love that you thought of me as you wrote your book.
I know. Let me tell you, there were some tough days. And on those days, I was like, where can I go? There's so much of a solitary experience of the writing process.
Yeah, yeah,
And yet, we are writing for real humans that we are really in touch with. We have real editors, right? So there's all these places that you can go to remember that, yes, it's like me and the laptop and this page, but this is really like a 3D experience. So how can I tap back into that to remind myself what this is for, you know?
yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm so glad that we've gotten to meet now. I'm like,
Thank you.
we're friends.
Please. And we're both right here in California. Come on,
I
we've got
know.
lots.
We're going to meet
And
in
I'm the
person.
astrological sign after you as a Leo. So I have Cancer. Come on, meant
Oh,
to be.
yeah. And now I need to go get my birth chart and get that done and see where I'm
It's
supposed to. I think
fun.
it's
It's
good. So,
totally fun. It's totally fun. And if this is coming out on May 6th, then May 6th, then I
yeah.
can say that on May 8th, so 2 nights from now, I am doing a book party astrology workshop virtual.
Oh, well,
Yep, I know.
yes.
I'll
Okay.
get you
And
all those details.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm going to sign up. I know
It's
that
going to be
I'm
really
solo
fun.
parenting that
Completely
night.
free. Yeah,
I'm going to be like,
it'll be
kids,
so
take
fun.
yourselves to bed. Mommy's
Or you
got to
know
do her
what?
birth chart.
Join in and do your birth chart.
There you go. Oh, they
Yeah,
would gas on that. At least my
yeah,
daughter would. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
It's a family night.
I love it.
Where can everybody find you? And we know that they can buy all the signs everywhere books are sold, but where can they find you and connect?
Yeah, the two best places to find me are on Instagram at Jessie Rosen Writer, and I'm Jessie with an IE. And then I just recently started a Substack, and I'm loving writing on that space. And that's Bravery by Jessie Rosen at Substack.com.
I love it. Thank you so much and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thanks for having me.
I hope I am going to see you guys virtually tomorrow night or in 2 nights for the astrological birth chart event that Jessie is doing. I can't wait. I love this astrology thing. As I said, I'm a Cancer. So if there are any star twins, July 8th, let's get together and see if our birth charts align and if we're doing what we were supposed to be doing according to all of the astrological signs and whatnot. I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating. And I know that when you read all the signs, you are going to be even more fascinated as well. So be sure to pick it up and go follow Jessie today.